The being's scales rippled with color, shifting to a warm gold. You remembered. Even after all this time, you remembered. Its voice carried emotions that the translator could not quite capture. Relief, joy, something deeper. I don't understand, Mirai said. Her voice sounded small in the huge empty plaza. Around them, soldiers and officials stood frozen, watching this impossible reunion. You were so small. You were hurt. How are you here? The being stood, rising to its full imposing height. I am Kale of the Rix Dominion. 15 years ago, my scout ship crashed in your planet's atmosphere. The impact damaged my vessel and forced me into juvenile form for safety. I would have died in that flood. The cold water, the injuries, the fear. I was certain my life would end on this strange world, alone and afraid. Kale's wings spread slightly and people gasped. The wings were magnificent. Translucent membranes stretched between crystalline bones, catching the light and scattering it into 1,000 colors. But then you found me, Kyle continued. A small human child, fragile and young. You risked your life to pull me from the water. You gave me warmth when you shivered yourself. You shared food when you had little. You cared for my wounds, and you asked for nothing in return. Mirai shook her head. I couldn't just leave you there. You were hurt. That, Kyle said, is exactly why I have returned. A government official stepped forward nervously. Excuse me, but what exactly do you want with Ms. Han? Why bring a fleet to our planet? Kale turned those burning eyes on the official, who took an involuntary step backward. Among the Rix, a life debt is sacred. It must be repaid. For 15 years, I have searched for the small human who saved me. I rose through our military ranks. I called in favors from those who owed me. I brought the 3rd Fleet of the Rix Dominion here for one purpose, to discharge my debt to Han Mirai. I don't understand, Mirai said. You don't owe me anything. I helped because it was the right thing to do. Kale's scales shifted to silver, which Mirai somehow knew meant amusement. That is precisely why you deserve what I offer. Kale turned to address the cameras, the soldiers, the world watching. I have observed humanity for 15 years. I have studied your history, your culture, your potential, and I have seen how the Galactic Assembly treats you. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Galactic Assembly was humanity's connection to the wider universe. Earth had been granted probationary membership, but it came with restrictions. Humans could not travel freely between stars. Trade was limited. Other species treated Earth as a curiosity at best, a resource to exploit at worst. You are called primitive, Kale said, voice rising. You are exploited. Your resources are taken for minimal compensation. Your applications for full membership are denied repeatedly. Your voices are ignored in the assembly chambers. This is unacceptable. Kale turned back to Mirai. Therefore, I invoke the ancient laws of protection. I hereby claim Earth as a protectorate of the Rix Dominion. No species may exploit this world or its people without consequence. Earth's sovereignty is guaranteed under Rix law. The crowd erupted. Officials shouted questions. Soldiers looked uncertain. The world watching through cameras went into chaos, but Kale was not finished. And by the authority granted to me as fleet commander of the 3rd Fleet, I name Han Mirai as Empress Regent of the Terran Protectorate. She will speak for humanity in all matters of galactic importance. Her word is law. Her decisions are final. Silence fell like a hammer. Mirai stared at Kale in shock. What? No, I can't. I'm not a leader. I'm a relief worker. I help people dig out of floods. I can't run a planet. Kyle knelt again, bringing those ancient eyes level with hers. Mirai, listen carefully. I have met countless beings across hundreds of worlds. I have known emperors and warlords and politicians. Most sought power for themselves. They took and never gave back. They ruled through fear and force. Kyle's hand, massive and scaled, gently touched Mirai's shoulder. But you saw a dying creature in a flood and saved it despite danger to yourself. You shared food when you were hungry. You asked nothing in return. A being who has power and does not want it is exactly the kind of being who should have it. The Rix do not make this offer lightly. But I don't know anything about politics or war or running governments, Mirai protested. You know compassion, Kale said simply. You know sacrifice. You know what it means to help those who cannot help themselves. Everything else can be learned. I will help you. The Rix will help you. You saved my life when you had every reason not to. Now let me save your species from exploitation and irrelevance. The UN Secretary General pushed through the crowd. This is highly irregular. We have governments, democratic processes. You cannot simply name someone Empress. Kyle stood and faced the official. By galactic law, a species with a Rix protectorate must have a single representative to speak with binding authority. Mirai is that representative. Your internal governments may continue as they wish, but in matters of galactic importance, her word is final. This is not a request. It is done. Mirai felt dizzy. This could not be happening. Yesterday she was distributing supplies in Bangkok. Today an alien empire wanted to make her Empress of Earth. But then she thought about what Kale had said. About humanity being exploited. She had seen it herself in her work. Alien corporations strip mining the oceans. Technology shared at extortionate prices. Earth treated like a colony by species who saw humans as barely civilized. If she accepted this, she could change that. She could protect her people. Give humanity a real voice in the galaxy. But the responsibility was terrifying. Kale seemed to sense her thoughts. You do not have to decide alone. Take time, think, discuss with your leaders. But know this. The Rix Dominion does not make empty promises. Accept, and Earth will have protection, technology, and respect. Refuse, and we will depart, but Earth will remain at the mercy of those who see you only as resources to exploit. How long do I have? Mirai asked quietly. As long as you need, Kyle said. I have waited 15 years. I can wait longer. Around them the world watched and waited. Mirai looked at the massive ships hovering in the sky. She thought about her work, the people she had helped, the disasters she had witnessed. She thought about the creature she had saved without hesitation all those years ago. And slowly, she began to understand the weight of the promise that had been made in a cave during a flood, when a young girl decided to save a dying alien simply because it was the right thing to do. For 2 weeks the world debated. Every government, every news channel, every person with an opinion weighed in on what Mirai should do. Accept and become Empress. Refuse and send the Rix away. Mirai met with presidents and prime ministers. She listened to generals warn about alien influence. She heard economists explain the benefits of Rix protection. Everyone had advice. Nobody truly understood the weight she carried. Through it all, Kale remained. The fleet stayed in orbit, silent and waiting. Kale took up residence in a temporary facility outside Seoul, refusing to leave until Mirai made her decision. They spoke often during those 2 weeks. Kale explained Rix culture, the politics of the Galactic Assembly, the dangers Earth faced. There are species that see Earth as a resource mine, Kale explained one evening. The Voresh Collective has been strip mining your oceans for rare minerals. The Telonis Republic wants to establish breeding colonies here because your climate suits them. The Merchant Guild of Kessos keeps your technology primitive so you remain dependent on their trade. Without protection, Earth will be consumed piece by piece. And if I accept your protection, that stops? Mirai asked. Yes. The Rix are ancient and powerful. Most species fear us and all respect us. Under our protection, Earth becomes untouchable. Your trade becomes fair. Your voice in the assembly gains weight. Your future becomes your own. Mirai finally made her decision on the 15th day. She called a press conference and stood before the cameras, the entire world watching. I accept, she said simply. Not because I want power, but because humanity needs protection. I accept the title of Empress Regent, and I accept the Rix Protectorate. Starting today, Earth speaks with one voice in galactic affairs, and that voice will fight for our future. The reaction was immediate and divided. Half the world celebrated, half protested. But it was done. That was when the real trouble began. 3 major galactic assembly powers refused to recognize Earth's new status. The Voresh Collective, Telonis Republic, and Merchant Guild of Kessos formed a coalition. They sent a joint message denouncing the Rix action as illegal interference. They demanded Earth return to probationary status. When Mirai and Kale refused, the coalition invoked an ancient galactic law that Mirai had never heard of, trial by champion. It is an old law, Kyle explained grimly. Very old. If 2 parties cannot resolve a dispute through diplomacy, either may call for trial by champion. Each side selects a fighter. They battle. The winner's position is recognized as law. So they want to fight for Earth? Mirai asked. Yes. The Voresh Collective has put forth their champion, a warrior named Durax. He has fought 37 trials and never lost. Mirai felt cold. Who will be our champion? You. Kale's scales shifted to a troubled purple. The law requires the challenged party to provide a champion from their own species. The Varesh challenged you specifically. Only a human can fight. Then we find Earth's best fighter, Mirai said. Special Forces. Olympic martial artist. Someone who can win. But Kale shook his head. It must be someone with authority to speak for Earth. Someone whose victory or defeat is truly meaningful. By tradition and law, it should be you. Me? Mirai laughed, though there was no humor in it. I'm not a soldier. I've never fought in my life. I'd be killed in seconds. I know, Kale said quietly. That is why we must refuse the trial and accept their terms. It is not worth your life. Mirai spent that night walking through Seoul's streets thinking. She saw people going about their lives, unaware of how close Earth was to losing everything. She thought about all the places she had worked, all the people she had helped. She thought about her grandmother who had died 5 years ago and what the old woman would say. By morning she had decided. I will fight, she told Kale. No, Kale said immediately. Absolutely not. I will not watch you die. If I don't fight, what happens? Mirai asked. The Ricks withdraw. Earth loses protection. We go back to being exploited. Everything we fought for is gone. That's not acceptable. Your death is not acceptable, Kale said, voice rising. The walls trembled slightly. Then train me, Mirai said calmly. You have 3 weeks before the trial. Teach me how to fight. Give me a chance. 3 weeks is not enough. It's what we have. They argued for hours. Finally, Kale agreed, but only after Mirai pointed out something important. If I'm going to be Empress, I need to prove I'm willing to fight for Earth, not just send others to die for me. If I lose, at least I'll lose on my feet fighting. The training was brutal. Kale pushed Mirai harder than she had ever been pushed. They practiced 12 hours a day. Kale taught her Rick's combat techniques, focusing on speed and agility rather than strength. Human military advisors helped her study everything known about Voresh biology and fighting styles. Durax is stronger than you by far, Kale explained during one session. He has 4 arms, an exoskeleton that acts as armor and reflexes twice as fast as yours. You cannot win by overpowering him. Then how do I win? Mirai asked, gasping for breath after another grueling sparring session. You win by being human, Kale said. Durax follows patterns. He fights with precision and protocol. But humans? You improvise. You adapt. You refuse to quit even when logic says you should. Use that. As the weeks passed, Mirai grew stronger and faster. Her body adapted to the constant training. More importantly, her mind adapted. She learned to read her opponents, to anticipate and react. She learned that winning was not always about being the strongest. One evening, as they rested after training, Kale spoke quietly. When I crashed on your world, I was arrogant, reckless. I thought my youth made me invincible. The accident was my fault. I expected to die alone in that cold water, a failure to my people. Kale looked at Mirai with those ancient eyes. But you showed me something I had forgotten. That compassion exists even in species we dismissed as primitive. You changed how I see the universe, Mirai. If you die in this trial, I will have failed you as badly as you never failed me. I won't die, Mirai said with more confidence than she felt. I have too much to do. 3 weeks passed quickly. The trial was set to take place on a neutral station orbiting Jupiter. Representatives from hundreds of species would attend. Humanity would watch and hope. The night before the trial, Mirai could not sleep. She stood looking at Earth from the transport ship's window, wondering if she would ever see it again. Kale appeared beside her silently. Scared? Terrified, Mirai admitted. Good, Kale said. Fear keeps you sharp. Use it. They stood in comfortable silence for a while. Then Kale said something unexpected. Thank you. For what? For trying. Whether you win or lose tomorrow, you are fighting for your people. That is what an empress should do. You have already proven yourself worthy. Mirai smiled despite her fear. Let's see if I can prove it by winning. The arena was massive, built for exactly this purpose centuries ago. Mirai stood in the center, feeling very small. Above her, viewing galleries ringed the space filled with representatives from hundreds of alien species. Somewhere up there, billions of humans were watching through broadcast feeds, holding their breath. Across the arena, Durax waited. The Voresh champion was terrifying to look at. 8 feet tall, covered in a black exoskeleton that looked like armor. 4 arms, each ending in claws designed for tearing. Multiple eyes that tracked Mirai's every movement. He had killed before in these trials. Everyone knew it. The arena master, a neutral official, announced the rules in a voice that echoed. Trial by champion as witnessed by the Galactic Assembly. Han Mirai of Earth against Durax of the Vorish Collective. The trial continues until one fighter yields or cannot continue. Victory grants legal right to the winner's claim. Begin. Durax charged immediately. He was faster than Mirai expected. His forearms were a blur of motion. Mirai barely dodged the first strike, rolling sideways as claws tore through the space where she had stood. She came up running, trying to create distance. But Durax was relentless. He pressed the attack, forcing Mirai to dodge and weave. She could not match his strength. Every time she tried to strike, he blocked easily. His exoskeleton absorbed her blows like she was hitting stone. 2 minutes into the fight, Durax landed a hit. One massive arm caught Mirai across the ribs, sending her flying across the arena. She hit the ground hard, gasping for air. Pain exploded through her chest. Probably cracked ribs. Durax advanced slowly, confidently. In the galleries, some aliens were already celebrating. It was clear to everyone that this fight was nearly over. Mirai struggled to her feet. Blood ran from her split lip. Her ribs screamed with every breath. She was outmatched in every way that mattered. But she had promised herself she would fight. So she did. She changed tactics, stopped trying to hurt Durax and focused on avoiding him, used the arena's space of staying mobile, making him chase her. It looked like cowardice to the watching aliens. But Mirai was learning his patterns, watching how he moved, studying his rhythm. Durax grew frustrated. He charged again, all four arms swinging. Mirai dodged at the last second, and his momentum carried him past her. She struck at his knee joint as he passed, not trying to break it, just testing its strength. The fight continued for 15 brutal minutes. Mirai took hit after hit. Her left arm hung useless. Her right eye was swelling shut. But she kept moving, kept learning, kept refusing to quit. And slowly the watching aliens began to notice something. Durax was slowing down. His attacks were less precise. His breathing was labored despite his species' natural advantages. He had expected to win quickly. His training was built on overpowering opponents fast. But humans did not quit, even when they should. Mirai saw her chance. Durax charged again, frustrated and angry. She waited until the last possible second, then dropped and rolled between his legs. As she came up behind him, she grabbed one of his arms and used all her remaining strength to pull. Not to hurt him, but to make him stumble. Durax's own momentum worked against him. He was charging forward, and Mirai's pull spun him sideways. His feet tangled. For just a moment, the mighty Voresh champion lost his balance. Mirai did not waste the opportunity. She remembered something Kale had taught her. Strength is not about force. It is about balance. She struck at Durax's center of mass with everything she had left. The blow would not have hurt him normally, but he was off balance, stumbling. The strike pushed him further. He fell, and Mirai jumped on top of him. She could not overpower him, but she could position herself where his forearms had trouble reaching her. She locked her legs around his neck and squeezed, not trying to kill him, just trying to restrict his breathing, slow him down. Durax thrashed violently. His arms swung wildly, trying to grab her. He rolled and slammed her against the arena floor, trying to crush her. Mirai held on through waves of pain. Her vision darkened at the edges. Everything hurt, but she did not let go. The thrashing grew weaker. Durax's movement slowed. His exoskeleton protected him from strikes, but it could not help him breathe when his airways were restricted. Finally, after what felt like forever, Durax tapped the ground with one arm, the signal of yield. Mirai released him and rolled away, gasping for breath. For a moment, she could not process what had happened. Then the arena erupted in sound. The arena master's voice rang out. Victory to Han Mirai of Earth. The trial is concluded. Mirai lay on the arena floor, every part of her body screaming in pain, and laughed. She had won. Earth had won. Kale was the first to reach her, landing in the arena with wings spread wide. The Rick's commander knelt and gently lifted Mirai. You magnificent, stubborn human, Kyle said softly. I should never have doubted you. I had a good teacher, Mirai managed through her split lip. The weeks that followed were a blur. The Galactic Assembly officially recognized Earth's protectorate status. The coalition fell apart. Trade agreements were renegotiated fairly. Suddenly, humanity had a voice that mattered. Mirai was crowned Empress in a ceremony that blended human and Rick's traditions. She wore armor made by Rick's craftsmen from Earth metals. Kale personally placed the star crown on her head, a circlet that sparkled like the scales of a dragon. In her inaugural address, Mirai spoke simply and clearly. Earth will not become a military empire. We will not conquer or exploit, but we will also not be exploited. We will defend ourselves and help others who need it. That is what humanity does. That is what I learned working in disasters. When someone needs help, you help them. Not because you expect something in return, but because it is right. Kyle knelt before her and made a public oath. My fleet, my life, my honor. All are yours, Empress. As you saved me, I will guard you and your people until the stars grow cold. Other species took notice. Earth's approach, combining human adaptability with Rick's honor, attracted attention. Smaller species that had been exploited by the Assembly began seeking Earth's protection. A new alliance formed built on principles of fairness rather than force. 5 years passed. The Terran Protectorate became one of the most respected powers in the galaxy. Earth healed. Its climate stabilized with Rick's technology. Its people no longer lived in fear of exploitation. Mirai proved to be a wise empress. She listened more than she spoke. She chose compassion when others chose force. She remembered her time as a relief worker and built those principles into how she ruled. One evening, she stood in the palace gardens in Seoul with Kyle, looking at the stars. I never imagined, Mirai said, that pulling a creature from floodwater would lead to all this. Kyle's scales shimmered with amusement. I never imagined a small being on a minor world would teach me the meaning of honor. Yet here we are. What happens now? Mirai asked. Now, Kyle said, we show the galaxy what humanity can become, together. In the garden behind them, a statue stood. It showed a young girl holding a small dragon, both caught in a moment of connection. The inscription at its base read simply, Compassion is the bridge between worlds, and across Earth, and across 100 worlds that had joined the Terran Protectorate. People looked to the stars with hope instead of fear, because one girl had saved one creature, and that small act of kindness had changed everything. Mirai wiped sweat from her forehead and surveyed the flooded street. The monsoon had hit Bangkok hard this year, displacing thousands. She had been here for 2 weeks now, coordinating relief efforts for the United Nations. At 27, she had made disaster relief her life's work. Every flood, every earthquake, every crisis drew her in. She understood suffering. She knew how to help. Her radio crackled. Mirai, we need you at the distribution center. We have a supply problem. On my way, she said, picking up her clipboard and heading toward the relief tents. She never made it there. The sky began to darken, not gradually like a storm rolling in, but all at once, as if someone had drawn a curtain across the sun. Mirai looked up and froze. Ships, hundreds of them. They appeared out of nowhere, materializing in the sky like ghosts becoming solid. Each vessel was enormous, easily the size of a city block. They did not look like human spacecraft with their metal and rivets and engines. These ships seemed organic, grown rather than built. Their hulls were crystalline and caught the light in strange ways, making them shimmer like soap bubbles. People around her started screaming and running. Mirai stood motionless, staring upward. She had seen alien vessels before. Everyone had ever since first contact 10 years ago. But nothing like this. These ships radiated power and age. They felt ancient and dangerous. Her phone erupted with emergency alerts. Every device around her began buzzing and beeping at once. The same message appeared everywhere in every language. Stand by for priority broadcast from orbital fleet. Then the sky spoke. The voice came from everywhere at once, resonating through the air itself. It was deep and musical, with harmonics that made Mirai's bones vibrate. People of Earth, we are the Rick's Dominion. We mean you no harm. We seek one individual. Her name is Han Mirai. She must be brought to Seoul unharmed within 24 hours. This is not a negotiable request. The world stopped. Mirai felt her knees go weak. Around her, people were staring at their phones, at the sky, at each other. Someone nearby was playing a news broadcast. The reporter's voice shook with barely controlled panic as she explained that every major government on Earth had received the same message. The Galactic Assembly was in emergency session. Nobody knew who the Ricks were or what they wanted, but they wanted Mirai. Within an hour, UN security forces had surrounded her. They were polite but firm. She was escorted to a helicopter and flown to the nearest airport. From there, a military jet took her back to Korea. Nobody would tell her anything. The security chief just kept repeating that she was not under arrest. They were simply complying with the alien's request. Mirai spent the flight trying to understand. She was nobody important, a relief worker. She had no access to classified information, no special skills. Why would an alien empire want her? Seoul was in chaos when they landed. The streets were filled with military vehicles. Fighter jets screamed overhead, though what good they would do against those massive crystalline ships Mirai could not imagine. She was taken to a secured building and questioned by intelligence officers from half a dozen countries. "Have you had any contact with alien species?" they asked. "Only the standard stuff." "I've seen Galactic Assembly representatives on the news like everyone else," she said. "Have you ever been abducted? Missing time? Strange dreams?" "No, nothing." "Why do you think they want you?" "I have no idea," but that was not entirely true. Deep in her mind, a memory was stirring. A creature with crystalline scales. A promise made 15 years ago. It could not be connected, could it? She mentioned it hesitantly. The officers looked at her like she was insane. "You saved an alien animal during the flood? And you never reported this?" "I was 12. I thought I imagined it." They did not believe her. How could they? It sounded crazy even to her own ears. 23 hours after the fleet's arrival, Mirai was taken to Seoul's Central Plaza. The area had been evacuated. Military forces ringed the square. News helicopters circled at a distance. The entire world was watching through broadcast cameras. One of the massive alien ships began to descend. It came down slowly, gracefully, making no sound at all. The ship settled into the plaza like a feather landing on water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a section of the hull shimmered and became transparent. A ramp extended downward, made of what looked like solid light. A figure appeared at the top of the ramp. Mirai's breath caught in her throat. The being was humanoid, but clearly not human. It stood nearly 8 feet tall. Its entire body was covered in scales that shifted between silver and gold, catching the light and throwing it back in rainbow patterns. Enormous wings folded against its back. Its face was angular and beautiful in an alien way, and its eyes burned with inner light, ancient and powerful. The being wore armor that seemed to be made of living metal, flowing across its body like water. It walked down the ramp with absolute confidence, and soldiers instinctively stepped back despite their training. Those burning eyes scanned the crowd and locked onto Mirai. The being spoke, and its voice was the same one that had resonated from the sky the day before. "Han Mirai." Mirai found her voice somehow. "Yes." The massive alien walked toward her, and the crowd parted like water. Soldiers raised their weapons but did not fire. The being stopped 3 feet away and looked down at her. Then it knelt, bringing its head level with hers. "Do you remember me?" it asked softly. Mirai stared into those burning eyes, and suddenly she saw it. The same intelligence, the same ancient awareness, the colors shifting across the scales, purple and blue and silver. "Bayol," she whispered. The rain had not stopped for 6 days. Mirai watched the water rise from the cave entrance, her grandmother sleeping fitfully behind her on a pile of salvaged blankets. The village below was gone now, swallowed by the angry brown flood that had transformed their peaceful valley into a churning lake. She was 12 years old and tired beyond measure. Her arms ached from carrying supplies up the mountain. Her clothes were still damp from the last rescue trip. But she could not rest. Not while the water kept rising. The emergency radio crackled with distant voices. Evacuation helicopters were coming, they said, but the storm made flying dangerous. Help would arrive when it could. Mirai turned down the volume so it would not wake her grandmother. The old woman had worked herself to exhaustion, helping neighbors escape. Now it was Mirai's turn to keep watch. That was when she heard the sound. It cut through the rain and thunder like nothing she had ever heard before. Musical, almost like singing, but filled with pain and terror. The sound pulled at something deep in her chest. She stood and peered into the darkness, trying to locate its source. There, down in the flooded ravine where the water rushed past broken trees and debris, something was crying out. Mirai knew she should stay in the cave. The water was dangerous. The current could sweep her away. Her grandmother would be furious if she knew. But that sound would not let her rest. Something was hurt down there. Something needed help. She tied a rope around her waist and secured it to a boulder. Then she started climbing down. The rocks were slippery and sharp. The rain pounded her face, making it hard to see. Twice she nearly lost her grip, but the crying sound grew louder, guiding her through the darkness like a beacon. She was close now. The water reached her waist, then her chest. The current pulled at her legs, trying to drag her downstream. She grabbed onto a fallen tree and pulled herself forward, following the desperate sounds. Then she saw it. At first, she thought her eyes were playing tricks. The creature trapped beneath the broken branches could not be real. It was the size of a large cat, but that was where any similarity to Earth animals ended. Its body was covered in scales that seemed to be made of crystal or glass. They shifted colors even in the darkness, purple and blue and silver. Two small wings lay crumpled and waterlogged against its back. The creature's eyes met hers. They were too intelligent, too aware, ancient and young at the same time. It cried out again, that musical sound of pain, and Mirai forgot to be afraid. She worked quickly, pulling away the branches that pinned it down. The creature was injured badly. One wing was bent at a wrong angle. Blood that glowed faintly in the dark leaked from cuts across its side. When she finally freed it, the creature collapsed into her arms, shivering violently. Mirai wrapped it in her jacket and began the difficult climb back up. The creature was heavier than it looked. Several times she had to stop and rest, holding tight to rocks while the rain tried to wash them both away. But she did not let go. When she finally reached the cave, her grandmother was awake and staring at her in shock. "What is that thing?" the old woman whispered. "I don't know," Mirai said, "but it was dying." Her grandmother looked at the creature for a long moment, then nodded. "Then we help it. Quickly, bring it to the fire." They worked together through the night. Mirai's grandmother had been a nurse before she retired. Her hands were steady as she cleaned the creature's wounds and wrapped them in strips of clean cloth. The creature watched them with those strange, intelligent eyes but did not try to escape or attack. Mirai fed it bits of dried fish from their emergency supplies. At first the creature would not eat, but hunger eventually won out. It ate delicately, almost politely, never trying to take more than Mirai offered. She named it Biol, which meant star in Korean, because its scales sparkled like starlight even in the dim cave. For 3 days the rain continued. For 3 days Mirai cared for Biol. She kept the creature warm by the fire. She shared her food and water. She changed its bandages and spoke to it softly, telling it stories about her life, her parents who had died in another flood years ago, her dreams of helping people in disasters. Biol seemed to understand. It watched her with those ancient eyes and made soft chirping sounds that almost sounded like responses. Its scales changed colors with its moods. Blue when it was calm, purple when it was in pain, silver when it seemed content. On the 4th day, the rain finally stopped. The water began to recede slowly, revealing the devastation below. The village was destroyed completely, but the helicopters could fly now. Help was finally coming. That morning, Mirai woke to find Biol standing at the cave entrance. The creature's wounds had healed with impossible speed. Its wing was no longer bent. The cuts across its side had closed, leaving only faint silver lines where they had been. Biol turned to look at her. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. Then the creature walked slowly toward her and pressed its forehead against hers. The contact sent a shock through Mirai's entire body. It was not painful, but intense. She felt a rush of emotions that were not her own. Gratitude, affection. Something that felt like a promise. And beneath it all, an intelligence far greater than she had imagined. Then Biol stepped back. The creature spread its wings, which suddenly seemed much larger than before. It looked at her one last time, its scales shifting through every color of the rainbow, and then it launched itself into the sky. Mirai ran to the cave entrance and watched it fly. Biol rose higher and higher, becoming a bright point of light against the gray clouds. Then it vanished completely, as if it had never existed at all. Her grandmother came to stand beside her. "What was it?" the old woman asked quietly. "I don't know," Mirai said, "but I think it was important." In the weeks that followed, the village was rebuilt. Mirai and her grandmother moved into a new house. Life slowly returned to normal. The helicopters came and went. Aid workers brought supplies. The flood became just another disaster to recover from. But sometimes, late at night, Mirai would look up at the stars and remember the creature she had saved. She remembered its impossible beauty, its intelligence, the way it had pressed its forehead to hers in what felt like a promise. She told no one about Biol. Who would believe her anyway? She convinced herself over time that it must have been a dream, a hallucination brought on by exhaustion and stress. But deep down, she knew the truth. And sometimes when she closed her eyes, she could still feel that moment of connection, Still feel that promise? Somewhere out there among the stars, Bial remembered her too.